Curtis is with us this evening. He came recommended also from PFLAG National, right? And so we're very glad to have Curtis talk about this topic that is very important. Curtis grew up in a small town in Southern Illinois. And when he was 16 years old, he was subjected to conversion therapy, an experience he was later able to use to ban conversion therapy in his home state. Curtis went on to be a leading figure in many LGBTQ organizations in the Midwest. Now living in Los Angeles, Curtis has taken his activism to the next level and founded the Conversion Therapy Dropout Network. And he's wearing a t-shirt.
Yeah.
To bring survivors of conversion therapy together in community and solidarity. So thank you very much, Curtis, for this work that you're doing.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I always try to wear the shirt, but it doesn't work in Zoom because it just says conversion therapy. So it's always really odd. But yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. Good to see all of you and see some new faces. So I've got a slideshow to go along with it. Typically, the way I present is I just kind of talk about my story and do different points. And so there's going to be more of visual aid, and it should work so that you can see me and the screen, but we'll see what happens. So let me get this going. And good. Okay. Can you still see me? Everyone can see me? Yes? Cool. All right. So my name's Curtis Galloway. And yes, I do live in LA now. I'm very happy to be here. But my story starts 10 years ago. So I grew up in a small town in Southern Illinois. Let me get there it is. Okay. So there we go. So yeah, I grew up in a small town, and I just wanted to cover some quick conversion therapy stats really quickly. We had some new things come out through Trevor Project at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020. It says 6 out of 10 LGBTQ youth said that someone has attempted to convince them to change their sexual orientation or gender identity. And that 10% of youth reported undergoing conversion therapy, and that of that 10%, only 3% was a licensed professional, and that 5% was by an outside religious leader, 6% was a personal pastor or priest. Now, that's a big problem when you think about the legislation that's coming out, including the legislation that I helped pass in Illinois, including the one that's also here in California. Because it only protects the 3% of the 10% of youth that are being subjected to conversion therapy. And then up there, the Williams Institute, this is a little bit outdated at this point, but they're estimating almost 700,000 people have gone through conversion therapy, and that 77,000 youth will be subjected to it before they turn 18. Now this is from, I think, 2015. So they're probably much different now, the Williams Institute stats. But that's what we know at the time and what we still know today. So I'm Curtis Galloway again. I lived most of my life in Southern Illinois. I've only been in California for about 2.5 years now. And before that, I lived in Missouri. For any of you that are familiar with the area, I lived in a town called Benton, which is about 45 minutes outside of Carbondale, Illinois, or 2 hours away from St. Louis, Missouri. So middle of nowhere, surrounded by cornfields. If you drive north far enough, when you get to the flatlands where all the almond fields are, that's close to where I grew up. That's what it looked like. I was raised a non-denominational Christian, and my family was active in the church, and that's how I was raised. And in 2010, when I was 16, I came out as gay to my family. I was at high school, and I had had some friends that were, I guess what you would call gay affirming, is what you'll see a bit later. But one of my friends wanted me to take her to the next town over. And being 16 at the time, I had just got my license in May, and this was in November. And so I wasn't allowed to leave the town without my family with me driving, because I just got my license. And so I called my family and I'm like, hey, Mom, can I take my friend to her boyfriend's in West Frankfort, was the town's name. And my mom said, no, you can't do that. You need to go home. Why would he be okay with you taking his girlfriend to him? You need to go home. And so I did. And when I got home, my dad confronted me and said, normally some dude would only be okay with you taking his girlfriend to him in another town if you were gay. Is that the case? And I said, well, only if you won't be mad. And so that's just kind of how it happened. I think it really surprised both of us. I don't think he was really anticipating me saying that, but it is what it is. And so we had a discussion and it seemed okay. But then my mom got home and they started talking, and I think it really kind of sunk in and they started to really freak out. And we got in a lot of fights. After that, my mom did go through my internet history. They searched everything. They searched my car. They searched my bedroom, the computer. And they did find where I had been in some online chat rooms talking to other men and kind of exploring my sexuality in that way, talking to other gay men out there. And that freaked them out, being 16, with rightfully so. And so we had a huge fight, and I told them I wanted a counselor. And they told me that they had found someone in Kentucky, and so we went. And so that's where it started. So there's some pictures of me from when I was 16 up through probably around 17, 18. I was in the emo phase, so I was one of those kids with one of my very good friends on the left there. But that house right there is not my house. That is the house that my conversion therapist operated out of. And so every week or every other week, depending on the time frame, I would go into that house and I would be there for 2 hours. It started out with my parents going in for an hour, talking to him and him coaching them. And then they would come out and wait, or they would go to the mall or something without me. And I would go sit in his office, and we would talk about things. So it was very much, my conversion therapy was not one of those therapy camps that you hear of. I never met any of his other clients. I never met any of his other any colleagues, anything like that. It was strictly just talk therapy, because he was a licensed counselor and he did do other types of counseling and therapies. But here are some quotes directly from my record. So when I turned 18, I requested my record from him, being the legal owner of those records. And so I have pulled some things out of here just so you can see exactly what I was told word for word on the screen. Telling me to limit contact with gay affirming friends at my school, warning me that if I don't do that, that they're going to take me out of high school. One of them is using examples, saying that some people are predispositioned to be murderers, rageaholics, rapists, and child molesters, but they are not born that way. It is their choice if they allow their inclinations to go in those directions and they choose to practice those things. I changed his name to Mr. Counselor. He explained that homosexuality is similar and that some people are predispositioned to it, and it is their choice if they decide to become a homosexual by practicing it. So in this way, at 16 years old, he was equating me to a murderer, rageaholic, rapist, and child molester. Talking about male characteristic activities, reminding me that we are naturally attracted to what we do not possess, and that male characteristic activities help us feel more like a man so that we have less potential to feel same-sex attractions. He went on to say things like doing male characteristic activities like taking charge. So very, very misogynistic and very toxic masculinity. These were the types of things that he was trying to instill in me. And it wasn't really the problem of him necessarily in those sessions. It was what happened outside those sessions, the rift that was forming between me and my family. One of the things that I've noticed looking back is that my family, we weren't necessarily extraordinarily religious beforehand, but going through the process, my parents slowly became more religious and more faith-based, and they would use that as a weapon against me. And we would do like Bible studies and reading from the Bible, and I would be required to read certain passages. You probably know some of the passages that I was instructed to read. And so it was really the rift in my family that did the real damage. I remember that a lot of the times I would just be in my room because I was grounded, completely grounded, could not go anywhere, did not have a phone, did not have a TV, did not have any sort of computer or car for a while. And it was basically just me being watched and them reporting back to this counselor, and then telling me that I'm not trying hard enough because, I never really believed I could change. A lot of my friends that I had were LGBTQ plus. And so a lot of, talking to them really showed me what the community was and what it was about and what it meant to be gay, at least from a small town perspective. Coming from this small town, you have a lot of bigotry, a lot of racism, a lot of, typical things you hear about in Midwest small town. But I knew that sexuality wasn't something that I could just turn off and on like a light switch, and so being that I'm very stubborn, and my family's very stubborn, it would lead to a lot of fights. And I just remember that, the counselor would instill all of this fear that I'm going to get AIDS and I'm going to die, that I'm going to, I'm going to be taken up by some strange man and he's going to rape and murder me. And that he would show my parents these videos of a pride festival. And it would be I don't remember if it was like a pastor or who it was, but they were interviewing people about what they thought about religion. Because this was all faith-based, right? And there would be these men running around in skimpy underwear clothing, which, it's not a bad thing now thinking back, but, they would all be saying, F the Bible, F God, and this, and just him saying, is this what you want? Is this what you want to turn into? And then showing that to my parents and really feeding their fears of this is what my future is going to look like as a gay man. So it was just a lot of that. And then I had my treatment plan. And again, this is word for word, praying, doing a Bible study, being active in church, exercising, not eating junk food. I wish I'd stuck to that one a little bit more, but nothing too terrible. So we kind of hid it underneath this veneer of nice things I'm supposed to do, getting sleep. But then we get into the bad ones. Limiting times with the gay affirming friends, reading from Narth and Exodus International. I had to read all of their materials, doing more masculine characteristic activities and adopt a more masculine persona. I still don't to this day know what that means. I still have no idea what I was supposed to do. If I was supposed to join the football team, I don't know. Study women. I was supposed to study women, figure out what types of characteristics are attractive to me and what complement me. He made it very clear that women are to complement the male, right? And then bouncing my eyes and reading another Narth article. So these are my treatment plan that was given to my family that I was to follow. And if I wasn't following it weekly, I would get in a fight with my family. And there was a lot of fighting due to the fact that there was an hour and a half drive to him, an hour and a half back after they would talk to him. And he would instill this fear in them and this shame in them. There were parts where he did blame my family, where it was the typical, the mother was overbearing, the father was absent. And so that just added to the fuel of the fires. And so A lot of my story and a lot of what I share about my story is the factual parts about it and the things that he said and the practices that he put in place. But like I said before, the real damage was done at home. A lot of the hurt and harm that I even still feel today is from my family and things that they've said to me and things that they did. And that's what really stuck with me. I don't care about this counselor, but I care about what I went through with my family, different things that they did and said. And so eventually I stopped going. And it was, my family didn't see an improvement in me. And so we stopped going, and we kind of stayed at this don't ask, don't tell type thing. They still believed that I had made a choice not to change my sexuality, and that I was going to live my life and there was nothing they could do. And so I did. I lived a double life for several years, probably about 3 or 4 years, that I just lived this double life through college, having a first boyfriend, having all the struggles of having a relationship, but having no one to talk to about it, not having my parents to talk to about it because they didn't want to hear it. And so eventually I went to college, right? And that's where I got involved with my activism. That's really where it started to ramp up. So I met one of my best friends ever. Her name is Tara Bell, and she was working at the college that I had attended. And we had gone to an acting class, and I met her there. And then I started telling her about my experience, and she goes, "Well, that's conversion therapy." And I had no idea what it was. And so she started explaining it to me, and eventually got me connected with the Southern Poverty Law Center. And that's where I started getting involved with banning conversion therapy in Illinois. So I got involved with Equality Illinois and Representative Kelly Cassidy. You can see her there in the teal shirt in the middle. And I testified in front of the House of Representatives Committee, the Senate Committee, and then over there on the left, I spoke to the governor of Illinois himself about it. And it passed. They passed it, and it was fantastic. I love it. The governor actually went into Representative Cassidy's office afterwards and told her that if it hadn't been for my story, he wouldn't have signed it into law. So it really that kind of springboarded my activism, that my story matters and that it can make a difference. So from there, I kind of went off on my own, started different organizations in college, kind of pulling my family through it. They weren't okay with it at first. They really pushed back, didn't want to be exposed in the way that they were, I guess, that they were scared of how they'd be perceived. They were scared of digging things back up. But they eventually came around. And I remember that I was going to college. I was moving away to college after I'd gone to community college, still living at home. And we were driving up. It was a 5-hour drive, and I was only with my dad. And as we're driving back home after all of the things I had to do at college for scholarships or whatever, my dad's sitting in the car driving, and he goes, "Son, I need to talk to you." And I'm thinking, oh my God, we've got 4 hours in this car. Thinking back to all the different times he said those same things to me in the car, and what it meant. But he sat there and he said, "I've been thinking, and your mom and I have talked, and if being gay is something that's going to keep us from having a relationship with you, it doesn't matter. And that we don't care, and that we are sorry for what we did." And it's kind of, I was, what? And I remember texting my friend Tara and be like, "Oh my God, my parents just told me that they don't care and that they're sorry." And it was just kind of this moment of just like this lifting burden off of me. And it was just amazing. I later found out that he, in a very recent interview that he did, where I was in the room the first time they've talked about it, like 3 months ago, I learned that he had seen me walking to college, and he was driving away, and he had thought in his head, he's like, this is your son. This is the baby that you held when he was born, and he's walking away from you now. And if you don't change the way that you're thinking, he's going to keep walking away from you. And that's what did it. And he told me that he called my mom crying, and she had been thinking the same thing, and they just reconciled right there. And so now they're very supportive. This happened, gosh, probably in 2014 when that happened, before the conversion therapy ban. But it happened then, and ever since then they've been very supportive. They've even gone as far as inviting some of my boyfriends over, the various ones before I before I got out here, and now they're very supportive. So now I'm here. I'm in LA, and I've started the Conversion Therapy Dropout Network. After I had gone to a conference, the Creating Change conference 2 years ago, I talked to somebody that had asked me if there was an organization for conversion therapy survivors as a community, and there wasn't really any like organization that existed specifically for that. It was mostly just like social groups. So I decided to found my own. And that's where we're at. So I created an organization to kind of stand as a beacon of light for other conversion therapy survivors to know that they're not alone. Because that's one of the things that I experienced when I was going through conversion therapy, is feeling like I am the only one experiencing this and that I am just alone in the world. And so I want to fix that so that nobody else has to feel that way. And so now being here in LA, I am happily paired with my boyfriend Julio. And my parents are very accepting. They actually came to visit me 2 years ago now, I believe. Time does run differently in COVID. But they came out. There my mom is at her first drag show down in the bottom right corner. I do have a little brother who's also accepting of me. And they're overall supportive. Actually, the last time I was in a PFLAG meeting, my parents did go back and watch the recording afterwards, and they're working on getting their testimony out there about how they were essentially tricked by this counselor into feeding into this dogma, and how they were wrong, and how it was very fear driven, and that he fed on their fears. And so, like I was talking about, Conversion Therapy Dropout Network is the organization I founded. We are here to bridge the gap between conversion therapy survivors. And we recently did a conversion therapy survivor caucus at the Creating Change conference. It was the first one of its kind. This was last year, I guess, and 2020. And that's who we are. Our programs are Survivor Sunday. So every month we have a Survivor Sunday where conversion therapy survivors can come together, talk about any number of issues. This latest one that we had was coping with family traumas and the holidays. We've done ones such as coping with stress and COVID. A lot of us actually found that being quarantined and experiencing COVID re-triggered our conversion therapy experiences in a very strange way. So we do different things like that. We do help people find LGBTQ plus affirming mental health practitioners should they need that. We do education about conversion therapy. And then we also assist people in writing their conversion therapy story and getting their story out there, and really helping conversion therapy survivors work through their trauma so that they're able to use their story in a constructive way if they desire to do so. Some ways that you can help, of course, always spreading awareness about conversion therapy, what it is, what it does, current stats, if you can remember them. Also spreading awareness about our organization, just connecting survivors with us, even if it's just to talk. I'm always available to schedule one-on-one chat with conversion therapy survivors. A lot of the times that's what people like to do, just to know that there's someone out there that understands what they've went through and the feelings that they're feeling, even though they can't necessarily express it. Distributing literature, getting our information out there, as well as information about conversion therapy, again, connecting, referring to other organizations that may need our help. We've been working with connecting with Spanish-speaking communities here in LA. volunteering. We always need help with our social media outreach, just graphic design, anything really. Joining our board, and of course, donations always help. And yeah, so that is my story. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer any of them. I am very open about my story. There's a lot of information to cram into one presentation, so I could talk for days about this. So thank you very much for having me. I always love coming to these, so thank you.